Alright, so I think I confused a lot of people by acting confused about Kid Flash eating all the ice cream at the birthday party. Clearly this is on me and I wasn't clear enough in what I was getting at. Basically, I was trying to put some emphasis on the idea that all the other characters have important traits or relationships highlighted in that episode around that time, but Kid Flash doesn't get the same treatment. But yes, it is accurate to say that he eats more because of his metabolism and his whole speedster gig. After all, he keeps snacks with him to fuel up too. My apologies for all the confusion. Now let's move on to episode 9. In this episode, the team has their memories wiped by Simon, the psychic villain. As such, just like the characters themselves, we are dropped right into the middle of events, after Simon has already wiped their memories. Thus, we're also left to piece together what's going on. Because of this, we get to see some different sides of the characters. For example, we hear a bit about Artemis's relationship with her father, and we see how Kid Flash's interactions with Artemis look when he doesn't already dislike her, and when she doesn't already dislike him. In fact, this is one of the stronger ways that the show pairs Artemis and Kid Flash. Kid Flash is actually quite sweet to her, he's quite likable, and he tries to make her feel comfortable. This is the first episode in season 1 that I felt that Kid Flash was particularly endearing. Fortunately, some later episodes are going to keep up this trend. Beyond that, however, this episode is about Miss Martian and, by extension, her relationship with Superboy. First off, we see her confidence in her abilities as a psychic, with how she helps piece together everything that's happened to them over the 6 months they've forgotten about by looking through her friends' memories. She then shows her strength by fighting against Simon without hesitation, by running right into danger to help Superboy, and by helping him piece together his memories with such ease. Considering that her internal struggle in the second season will involve her use of her psychic powers, and that the events of the second season will result in her being afraid to use them, the more emphasis that is placed on her strengths here, the better. After all, she goes from strong to overconfident and rash. Here we're in the strong phase, and we need to cover this before we can move on to the overconfident and rash phase. I also like the way that this episode builds towards Miss Martian and Superboy's relationship. Miss Martian's care for him is evident in the way that she rushes off to help him. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but I still like that we're getting some more serious moments of care mixed in with their comedic moments and Miss Martian's clear physical attraction to him. Overall, this is a pretty strong episode that highlights some of the core elements of Miss Martian's character that the rest of this season, and much of the next season, are going to build upon. In the next episode, Lex Luthor is introduced as an arbitrator in discussions between North Ralasia and South Ralasia. Speedy is tasked with protecting him, even though Lex Luthor is a villain, as these two countries coming to a peaceful agreement is, of course, something the heroes want as well. After some difficulties, Speedy asks Aqualad for help, and they work together to ensure that things run smoothly and that everyone is safe during North and South Ralasia's talks. Along with this, there are some scenes involving Superboy and Miss Martian's first days at school. While this is an exciting episode, its development for Speedy is exceptionally simple. He begins by wanting to do things on his own, and he refuses to ask Aqualad or any of the other members of Aqualad's team for help. However, by the end of the episode, after he's gotten help from Aqualad, he says that he respects them. It's a clear move from not quite respecting them to respecting them quite a lot. Beyond that though, this episode is mostly about setting up plot points that can be used in later events, such as the term Broken Arrow being used on Speedy, various hints that Cheshire and Sportsmaster are related, the introduction of Lex Luthor's partnership with the Light, Sportsmaster telling Aqualad that there is a mole in their team, and so on. Of course, there's nothing wrong with this episode primarily being used to set up later plot points, but that means that there isn't all that much to say about this episode on its own. The scenes with Superboy and Miss Martian are somewhat similar in this regard. They're here to build up Superboy's and Miss Martian's relationship, through events like Miss Martian giving Superboy the name Connor, him carrying her books at school, her trying out for the cheerleader team, and all that jazz. Of course, these scenes take on more significance from Miss Martian's character later, when all of this is recontextualized by the Hello Megan TV program. So in a way, these scenes are also building up towards future events, even if they have some relevancy now with how they figure Superboy and Miss Martian struggle to fit in with human society. All in all, this is another solid, action-packed episode of Young Justice. Next up is episode 11. This episode involves Miss Martian and Superboy sneaking into a prison because there's suspicion that the ice villains from episode 1 were apprehended too easily, and that they might be planning something from inside the prison. As is often the case with Superboy-centric sections of the show, this episode homes in on his complex feelings about Superman. Specifically on how Superman neglects Superboy and on Superboy's annoyance with the fact that he isn't quite like Superman. This is clearly shown through how quickly Superboy gets upset about the differences between him and Superman, even when no one is doing anything to try to upset him. In this case, that occurs when Miss Martian just wants to mention something about Superboy's strength, but he finishes her sentence for her, saying that his strength isn't on Superman's level. He rejects her thoughts of him and instead places his own on her, assuming that her conceptualization of Superboy is the same as Superboy's. Superboy's interactions with Icicle Jr. fulfill a similar purpose, with how Icicle Jr.'s father is the head honcho of this little prison gang and of the plan to bust all the criminals out of this prison. Then there's this little counseling session with Hugo Strange, where Miss Martian starts talking about Superboy's issues with his father figure, which prompts a great line when Superboy says that maybe he refuses to live in a stupid fantasy world where every problem is solved in half an hour. Again, considering the whole Hello Megan thing, and how Miss Martian in part loved that show because of the way that problems were wrapped up in 22 minutes or, a 30-minute slot of television. Noticing things like this upon rewatching is quite gratifying and does give the show an extra level of rewatchability. More importantly though, this may show us something deeper about Superboy's and Miss Martian's relationship. After all, we're going to learn later that he already knew about Miss Martian being a white Martian, even if we don't know exactly when he figured that out, and despite her not telling him that. So maybe he already knew about her obsession with Hello Megan and the ideas surrounding that, even if only on a subconscious level. While in the last part of this video series, I criticized the way the first season of Young Justice handles romance, it isn't all bad. Sure, I find many of the interactions between the romantic couples in this season awkward and sometimes a bit cloying, but some of the stuff in this episode is pretty good. In particular, I like how when Superboy thinks Miss Martian's in trouble, he comes up with a plan to manipulate Icicle Jr. to turn all the criminals' collars back on so he can do a better job of getting to her. He's normally such a direct character, the type of guy who just runs in and beats the crap out of stuff without a plan in mind, but that's changed a bit. He's learned from that fight with that robot. He's learned that sometimes going headfirst into battle isn't the best idea. More significantly though, the fact that he's willing to set aside this anger inside himself, despite the fact that he's been particularly irritable this episode, and come up with a plan to help her. That's pretty sweet, and a good way of showing just how much he genuinely cares about her. Of course, the episode ends with Superboy and Miss Martian effectively becoming a couple. This is a good episode that places Superboy and Miss Martian in a compelling situation, and which uses that situation to explore Superboy's character in fairly interesting ways. Next up is Homefront. In this episode, Artemis and Robin return to Mount Justice to find that it's been invaded and that the other members of their team are in danger. As Sportsmaster mentioned a mole being within the team, it makes sense that we'd spend some time focusing on Artemis, as she's the most obvious candidate for the mole. So the question then presented is, does this episode make Artemis seem like a traitor or like a true member of the team? The answer is clear. She's committed to this team. I mean, she even puts her life in danger for them. The episode consistently goes back to Artemis's relationship with her family to make it clear how important this decision is for her. After all, her sister seemingly abandoned her, and it's clear that she's had other familial issues even if we don't know exactly what those are yet. But she refuses to do that to her friends, to her new family, as she calls them. All in all, this is a sweet but simple episode, which uses its tense situation to explore Artemis's character and her loyalty to the group. Again, it's another episode that's building up to some future moments that's part of a larger plot that's being split up across episodes. And despite not having more to say about it, I really enjoy it. Episode 13 homes in on Aqualad's position as the leader of the group. After the dangerous events of the last episode, and the potential that Red Tornado was the mole in the group, the team is upset with him for not telling them about the mole, and they begin to question his leadership and stop listening to him. So, on this new mission to find the brain, Aqualad has to find a way to regain the team's trust. As Aqualad's leadership crumbles, naturally other aspects of the team do too. Miss Martian and Superboy start arguing because Superboy is behaving like a character out of a 70s sitcom, as Miss Martian says. Robin and Kid Flash just kind of start doing their own thing, and Aqualad's confidence in himself shrinks. Fortunately, Captain Marvel is there to help remind Aqualad of his role, and of the importance that he maintains control of this situation. Captain Marvel is the perfect character to take up this role at this time. After all, he's a respected hero because of how he presents himself and because of his abilities. If people knew he was a child, it's less likely that he would get this respect, at least at this point. But since he performs the role of an adult, since he embodies maturity and power well enough, he manages to maintain control as a hero. He manages to define how he's seen by other people. The very basis of his character does a good job of communicating how important confidence and presentation are when it comes to being a leader, so it's a great idea to include him here. Reflective of this theme is how the brain controls these animals with mind control, which ultimately doesn't let him gain the info he wants about Captain Marvel. So having henchmen that are forced to follow doesn't work out. It's not about control with an iron fist. It's about gaining voluntary respect from others. Ultimately, the team ends up respecting Aqualad's decision, despite their immediate inability to understand why he'd keep this information from them. And that's because Aqualad takes control of the situation. He respects their feelings, he respects that they're upset with him, but he ultimately tells them what's going to get done and what they need to do, while also very clearly giving them the option to force him to step down after this mission is complete. It's a really solid moment for his character, for this character that from the outset wasn't really all that certain about the idea of being the leader, and now we're seeing how he's growing into this position, how he's becoming a stronger, better leader and a better hero overall for it. Overall, for all those reasons, I like this episode quite a bit. Plus, I just like Captain Marvel. The inherent goofiness of having this kid act in the ideal superhero body, with none of the other characters knowing that's the case, is a lot of fun. And that leads to some great moments in other episodes where Captain Marvel's just kind of hanging around there and nobody really knows why he's there, and he's bringing Wally nachos, and he's just a funny character. I really like him. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you're enjoying this series, and I really appreciate you coming back for part 2. The next part of this series is going to be really involved. I have a lot to say about some of the upcoming episodes, and I hope that you'll stick around for that part as well. As always, I just want to say thank you to my patrons. It means so much that people are willing to give some of their hard-earned money to me to help me to continue to make these videos. That's just, it's really wonderful. It means so much. So I really appreciate that, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to hearing from you in the comments below. Bye-bye.